Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and welcome to my July 2019 horoscope report for you. It is my intention for this video to give you the information that I believe that you need to make this the best month possible and learn a little astrology while you're at it. Definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com, where I have a very extensive astrology blog, including blogs on the new and full moons and how best to use those power periods. If you are interested in learning astrology and you resonate with how I teach, check out my astrology apprenticeship program, also at anniehelpsyou.com. Definitely check out my new book, that has become a beautiful bedside companion and purse-toting companion for my fellow spiritual seekers, an Amazon bestseller, Radical Prayer, Transform Your Life and the World in 28 Days. And you can see that at radicalprayerbook.com. So what do we have in store for you this month? I'm going to go into lots of details. Let's check them out now. Hello, Sagittarius friends. Welcome to my July 2019 horoscope report for you. We have a wild month ahead with 2 eclipses, 2 new moons, Mercury retrograde. We've got planets moving into Leo, which will make beautiful trines to your Sag planets. I'm a Sag too, so I'm very excited about this month for us. We've got a lot of emotion, high drama. That doesn't have to be bad. That can be wonderful. That can be amazing accomplishments and things coming to fruition that we've been hoping for. And if you've watched my June horoscope, if you haven't, then definitely go back and do that. It's called Your Greatest Wishes Fulfilled. We've got a carryover of that energy coming at this time as well. I also, in the June report, talk about where the eclipses are going to hit for Sages. So you definitely want to watch that as a companion video for this one, because I'm going to go into even more details about what this time period has in store for us. But I wanted to do a good focus on the just the eclipses, which I did in June. Okay, so we've got in things that we need to know about Jupiter retrograde and how to best handle that. We just have one more month here of Jupiter retrograde. It's our ruler. So I'm going to give you my keys for how to enjoy that instead of trying to fight it, and what it tends to bring so you can understand it better. Jupiter's our ruling planet, and when it's retrograde, certain things tend to happen, but there are ways to take advantage of it. There's also more stuff that we have to talk about. Concentration on partnerships and relationships. I'll show you the charts for the early, middle, and late degree placements, and I'll tell you all of the things that I can think of that will make this the best month possible for you, and all kinds of other details for you who want to learn astrology. So the flow of the rest of the video will be, I'm going to drop the charts in now. I'll show you the early, middle, and late degree charts that I'm using for the reading. Then I'll do a Mercury retrograde tutorial. This whole month is covered in Mercury retrograde energy, so you'll definitely want to know how to maximize that. And if you are a person that's like, la 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 la, I'm so sick of hearing about Mercury retrograde, then I still caution you to pay attention to this, because Mercury is retrograde half of our lives. So the more you can really understand this and how to use the energies, the more you're going to be happy and have gracefulness and flow in this period of time. That's why I created the tutorial. So then you'll see that, and then you'll see me back on the screen to talk about the general transits, including my most important dates to note and other things to know about the mood of this month and how you can best use the energies to your benefit. Okay, so let's look at the charts now. Okay, Saggy friends, we're going to talk about lots of details here for this month for you. First, let's figure out if you're an early, middle, or late degree placement. Basically, November born or 0 to 9 degrees, you're early. Middle, December 1st through 10th, or 10 to 19 degrees. And late, which is where I am with you all, December 11th through the rest of the sign, or 20 to 29 degrees. And yes, this reading is still for you if you're watching for your rising sign. Rising sign, moon sign, sun sign are all different windows that we have that are showing us pieces of our astrological picture. So they are actually all valid and equally as valid. Okay, so the last month, June, I had called Your Greatest Wishes Being Fulfilled, and I went at length into why. If you haven't watched the June report, you definitely need to see that. There are certain of those energies that are carrying over, but in a different form. Okay, so when the planets move into the sign of Leo, that makes a trine with our Sag planets. They also start to move into the 9th house, which is the Sag placement of the house. Okay, so the sign is Leo, but Leo predominates in the 9th house. Now, Of course, I got to make things a little more complicated here because I just want you to see, which is why I divvy this out. Remember, I'm a late degree placement, which is how I came to see how different it can be. So Leo does, whatever, quote, technically rule the ninth house of a Sag, right? If you're looking at a whole house system, it does. But if you notice, in the middle degree chart, it's a late degree of Sag where it starts in the ninth house, and there's a massive amount of Virgo representation in that ninth house. Okay, and for you late degree people, you don't have Leo in that house for the most part. So for late degree people, when the planets are in Leo, it does accentuate your Sag energies, which in some ways, beams back to the ninth house because Sag rules the ninth house. But late degree people, we don't actually have Leo placements for the most part in our ninth house. So that means the things I'm about to talk about as themes that are opening up for Sages, they're going to continue even longer for you late degree placements, because once the planets move into Virgo, then you're still going to have this ninth house accentuated. So all the ninth house stuff for late degree placements is always going to be longer, from this perspective at this time of year. And really, this whole year, everything is all about Sag being I just realized that, look at that. My friend helping me do that spelled that wrong. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, so this whole year is completely all about Sag energies and ninth house energies because Jupiter's in Sag, right? Okay, so I just had to digress there because it's part of the whole picture, but now we're going to get back to what we're talking about. As the planets move into Leo, it's going to make us feel super creative, and that's early, middle, and late degree placements. You may notice this time of the year, every year for you, that when the planets get in Leo, you feel sizzly. You want to write books. You want to teach. You want to travel. You want to learn languages. You want to expand your horizons. You want to do spiritual stuff. Okay, so that is going to be getting kicked up here. It already was from June because of the Gemini placements and the Sag full moon. But now this whole Sag festival is continuing. The other piece that is present this month that wasn't as predominant in June is a lot of energy in Cancer. Okay, that started at the end of June, but now here we've got, continued moving through. And I guess it was present, but it was kind of drowned out a little bit by those Gemini energies. All right, so what happens when the planets are in Cancer? They're watery, and water puts out our fire. Okay, so we have our fire burning bright, yay, Sag stuff. And then the water stuff goes whoosh, dousing it, dousing it, dousing it. So a lot of times Saggies will feel tired. They'll feel like someone around them is annoying them, taking their fire out. And sometimes this will be like not cool and we have to set a boundary. But sometimes it's because we get out of control and a little fire turns into a wildfire. Oh, I know that one really well. Okay, so when that happens, sometimes we need that water. All right, so if you're getting whacked out, these water placements are going to help hem you in a little bit. But it's going to be very emotional. Either way, the eclipses, the water things are going to make us very emotional. And we can talk about emotion really well, and certainly we feel, obviously, we're very passionate. But like taking the time to stop to feel our feelings is an ongoing thing that we have to get better at. And this month, you may have to take your quiet time to properly do that. It's part of your spiritual process. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is how these relationship houses are very full for us. There's early, there's middle, and there's late. Okay, so you can see they're staggered a bit, but 7th and 8th are the partnership houses, and they are chock full for all Saggy placements. So that means that at this time, we're going to be very focused on relationships. So partnerships, romance, clients, collaborators, practitioners, employees, friendships. You may find that you're spending a lot of time focusing on these relationships. And that is appropriate at this time, and that can be very beneficial about this time. And that can be very good for you, Saggies, because we're very independent and we can do everything on our own and we don't like people interfering with our flow. So at this time of the year, when these planets crowd these areas for us, we get very much back into like our personal relationships. And a lot of blessings can come from that for the things that we want to do. All right, something else that's happening is Jupiter still in retrograde until August. So let's talk a little bit about how Jupiter retrograde manifests, because Jupiter is our ruling planet, so this is of utmost importance for us. Sometimes the gifts and the expansion seem to roll into the backdrop when Jupiter goes retrograde. When Jupiter is direct, it's like, woo, expansion, especially it's direct right in our sign right now. It's like the expansion frenzy. And it's just going, whoa. And everything is bigger and better and all of this, all that, right? As soon as it starts to go retrograde, we're like, whoa, we're tired now. Not really interested. Now we're going to not do anything. And I've talked about this over the last couple of months to help you understand that if your ambitions are waning, don't worry. They will come back. And when they come back, you're going to be like, oh, I feel like myself again. But what we want to do is we want to take advantage of the break from ourselves that we get when Jupiter's in retrograde. Okay? Because we don't get a break from ourselves this way very often. Because as long as Jupiter's direct, we're like, just on this expansion frenzy. And it is really helpful for us to narrow down, to rest, narrow down, have a little freedom from our ambitions, have a little freedom from our ideas. Basically how I always explain this, and I laugh to myself about this because it rolls through my head all the time. Saggies have maybe like 10,000 ideas a day. I got to do this, 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 right? So when Jupiter is in retrograde, maybe we only have like 1,000. I'm going to do this. Okay, so then it's like, wow, it's more manageable to pull through 1,000 ideas than 10,000 ideas, right? So just enjoy it is what I'm saying. Enjoy it. Don't be stressed about it if you're like, who am I? Why am I not wanting all this stuff? Blah, whatever. Just enjoy it, because as soon as August happens, we get towards the middle of August, second week of August, Jupiter goes direct, then the post-shadow period from the retrograde Mercury, clears up, then we're going to be back to our crazy selves again. This is a really good time to hone in on ideas and to make things a little bit easier by picking a few ideas to work on and not getting as distracted and all over the place. Okay, so included in this fullness for partnership energy is also the Mercury retrograde energies, okay? And the Mercury retrograde energies we're going to experience in the 8th house. All of us, early, middle, and late. So I'm going to go into a nice Mercury retrograde tutorial here after this segment, but as it relates to the 8th house, Mercury can bring back investment ideas or focus on investment. It can bring money back from the past. It can bring inheritances. It can bring support from family or spousal support. It can bring anything as far as support on any level from the past. So that's usually going to be somebody that somebody, a company that you tried to get funding from before. So if you have to do something at this time regarding funding, go back to previous contacts, and that you'll have more luck there for the most part. A lot of people may be looking to refinance or consolidate debt, or some people may be paying off debt. This is a house of debt, may have to go back and deal with taxes. This is a house of taxes. So things like that from the past may come up to be dealt with, debt, taxes, things like that. And it may be like, okay, there's a problem coming up, you have to deal with it, or it may just be you pay it off, which would be amazing. Spiritual discoveries and insights things you figured out from the past. How often does it happen when you have this amazing insight and you're like, whoa, and the angels are singing and everything is making sense, and then you forget about it, and then you rediscover it, and then when you rediscover it, you realize, oh wait, I figured this out already. But it's timely and you need it now. So those kind of things. The eighth house has, metaphysical and spiritual discoveries as well as psychological discoveries. Some people who have been interested in things like astrology or parapsychology or numerology or tarot, things like that, which are partly here in the eighth house, you may go back to it. You may decide, hey, I want to study that. I want to go deeper into it. You may pick up your, blow dust off some old books, and that can come back into the picture. Okay, so the last thing is that the new moon on July 31st, there are 2 new moons this month, which I talk more about in the general transits, but the second new moon on July 31st, or close to there depending on your time zone, is going to be at 8 degrees of Leo. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because this relationship between Leo and Sag that we talked about. Anytime there's an aspect in Leo, it's good for all Sagittarius. So yay for this new moon for us. Those of us who have, when I say those of us, I'm not actually, my sun is at a different place, but oh yeah, I guess I can fit in there. Okay, so those of us who have any Sag placements at all between 3 degrees and 14 degrees are going to be most positively affected by this new moon, with the closer to 8 degrees being more powerful. So just keep that in mind. And if you don't know how many Sag placements you have, get a free birth chart run online and just look for all the things with the Sag, all the planets with the Sag placement there. Because you might be like me and have just like a crazy amount of Sag placements. And they could be at all different degrees. And so when I go into these details of the specific degrees, you might be able to factor in more if you knew about that for yourself. Okay, so the flow of the rest of the video will be, I'm going to drop in the Mercury Retrograde video. I highly recommend you watch it, even if you're not interested in learning about Mercury Retrograde, because I am going to talk about ways to handle these energies that are going to cover this whole month. And then after that, you'll see me back on the screen. And if you don't want to see the Mercury tutorial, you can fast forward until you see me back on the screen. And I'll talk about the general transits, point out some particular dates, and some other things to note to make this the best month possible. Hi, this is going to be a quick tutorial of the energy of Mercury as it relates to the retrograde cycle and the things to keep in mind that are most important to hold in your consciousness as we go through this phase. So the first thing to know is that Mercury is retrograde or in its shadow, pre or post shadow period for about half of the year. So half of our lives we are in this. That's why it's really important to understand it. The second thing to know is that Mercury is retrograde for 3-ish weeks at a time, and there's about a 2-ish week before and after shadow transit. So the pre-transit shadow period and the post-shadow transit period. So all in all, it's about a 7-ish week process. So it is kind of long at a time. And the implications of Mercury retrograde are very strongly seen in this pre-shadow period and especially in the first part of this post-shadow period. And then they tend to like linger and just sort of wear off towards the end of that post-shadow period. Mercury rules communication and mobility. So anything involving speaking, writing, communicating, publishing, your devices that you use for communicating, your phones, computers, things like that, your cars, vehicles, walking, your mobility, your capacity to be mobile, your legs, the things that make you able to be mobile. If someone's in a wheelchair, their wheelchair would be there, or whatever it is that is related to your personal mobility. One thing to note as I describe the rest of this is that for people who are born with Mercury retrograde at birth, sometimes they feel the opposite effects of what everybody else feels during a Mercury retrograde period, and that things can flow even better for them during a Mercury retrograde period than when Mercury is direct. So if you have come to notice that, it may be because you have Mercury retrograde at birth. And it also may mean that you have, even if you don't officially have Mercury retrograde, and this is definitely a way more technical thing for you to have to try to figure out, but if Mercury was in a pre or post shadow period close to the retrograde, you could experience having Mercury retrograde from the birth perspective, even though it wouldn't as readily show up on your chart. So that's an important thing to note as well. Okay, so what tends to happen when Mercury's in retrograde is that there are changes to plans. There is uncertainty or confusion about what direction to take. There are plans that were made that are called into question. They may turn out to work out, but they get called into question. Things get called into question. Relationships get called into question. The use of devices and transportation gets called into question. Plans get called into question. And then sometimes they'll work out and sometimes they won't. But this calling into question is a typical Mercury retrograde thing. The topics of travel will often come up, and this can be a fine time for travel. There is a misconception that you shouldn't travel during Mercury retrograde. That's not true. You just have to be more aware because plans tend to change. Gates tend to change at the last minute. Issues with a car tend to come up if you're on a road trip, if you haven't, gotten everything checked out first or whatever, or even sometimes if you did. Impediments to travel, changes. When you're making agreements, Mercury also rules agreements. So if you're agreeing to something, the odds are that you're going to change what you're agreeing to. So it doesn't lend itself as well for long-term or rigid agreements. There are exceptions. If you're in there, don't worry. There are exceptions. But if you are negotiating during Mercury retrograde, you're either not seeing the whole picture, someone is purposely or inadvertently hiding something from you, or there are things that are coming that you're not aware of that are going to change how you can interact in the agreement that you've made. So in general, it is a good idea to be flexible. Flexible, temporary bridge agreements are like the theme that I like to put out there to best use this energy. Let's say you have to negotiate something or you're agreeing to something, and if it's minor or low stakes, you don't have to worry as much. It's the big things, that are more important. But there could be some minor things where it would be helpful to know this. Okay, so keep your flexibility. Try to make a interim or bridge agreement. So like, for instance, let's say you're trying to get a tenant in a house or in a professional space, and Mercury's in retrograde. Something like a month to month, totally awesome to embark on in a Mercury retrograde because you can get out of it. Something like a 3-month lease or even 3 to 6 months, something short term. You can make something for a month and then renegotiate when the planets are more clear, the energy is more clear. So those are ways that I like to deal with the Mercury retrograde. And it's definitely a good time to be aware that you might have things happen to your cars and phones and stuff. In general, I don't love this time as the best time to get a new device or car unless you can help it or unless it's a short-term or interim device. Like let's say you get a temporary phone to bridge you over something, that's more appropriate. Or you get a car that you plan to have for 3 to 6 months or, something like that. But for things that you're hoping to keep long-term, the retrogrades tend to make it shorter term. And that's typical. Another place to be careful is launches. Big, awesome, life-changing, once-in-a-lifetime launches are not the ones you want to have when Mercury is in retro. However, let's say you're a teacher and you teach classes twice a year and Mercury retrograde is the time for your re-enrollment. Re-enrollment is much better supported. But do also expect that when you have launches in a Mercury retrograde cycle, that more people are going to be wishy-washy, and there's more of a chance for people that have joined that are going to leave the class. So, it's not always a reliable time frame for trying to get people to commit to things, depending on what the nature of it is. It's hard. Commitments get a little bit more difficult. So basically, the things to remember for Mercury retrograde is the flexibility, be extra careful, check your plans, your travel plans and other things and documents and agreements extra carefully. And then anything that has the prefix re, pretty much, there's going to be exceptions to this, but rejuvenation, redoing, re-editing, rethinking, reconsidering, even rest. It's a good time to rest. Anything like that where you're like going back over something is better indicated than something brand new, if possible, unless the new thing is short term or a bridge or something you consider doing, like, oh, I've always wanted to try that. Maybe I'll take that class, and the class is, 6 months or whatever. That can be fine. What we really need to have caution with is the bigger things and the things that are higher stakes, etc. Mercury retrograde can be an amazing time. You can get lots of stuff done, inspiration from the past, tying up loose ends from the past, and preparing for a nice fertile ground for future wonderful things. I'm calling the theme of July 2019 for all signs 3 times the manifestation power, bold new directions, and time to be brave. It's always interesting when we have a transit like Mercury retrograde that brings this eye to the past, coinciding with so much potential for new energy. So we've got 2 intense eclipses this month, plus 2 new moons this month. Whenever we have a month with 2 new moons, it opens up more potentials for brilliant new paths, and the same thing with the eclipses. But this is happening all under the cover of this Mercury retrograde. So that means that themes from the past, things worked on in the past, contacts from the past, plans from the past, are all going to factor in very heavily to the new opportunities that come. So we talked at length about Mercury retrograde and where that hit in your chart or will hit in your chart, and also what the implications are there. So we're going to go into some additional things to know about this month. The eclipses obviously are bringing massive changes. The transits this month are pretty equal as far as sweet or challenging, and a lot of them could just really go either way. So when we have a situation where there's a transit that's occurring and someone can either manifest something positive or something challenging from it, it really makes it more important for us to watch how we're looking at things. The perspective that we have on life, the perspective that we have on everything, colors, changes, effects, how we experience things. So the more you can be well rested and positive can help you to frame the energies that come in. And the more present you can be emotionally is also going to flavor this month, because with the eclipses and with the Cancer energies and even with the retrograde energies, there's a massive amount of emotion this month, high emotional tides this month, for better and worse. So amazing culminations, things that you've been hoping for forever can just come to you at this time. I always think about the eclipse time as the vision of the spider with the web. You've spent all this time until July weaving this beautiful web. And sometimes those webs can get really big. I think about the webs I've seen like in the rainforest in Costa Rica, taller than a person, these gigantic webs. And of course the spiders that go along with them are pretty big too. But in any case, this web that you've created, now the eclipse time and the retrograde time are both times to just sit back and see what food comes to you. It's not the best time for initiating something huge, although sometimes chance or other things force it to happen that way. But the more you can be flexible, be relaxed, be well rested, not be super intent on pushing an agenda, being flexible, the more you can observe what is coming to you so that you can strike or take in according to what feels the best with the options that come to you. It's a fine time for research, but it's not the best time necessarily to try to push something to happen. It's more of an acceptance of what's coming in and what you're going to do with it. A lot of the eclipse news and changes may have already taken place before the actual eclipses, which occur this month. So you may already be steeped in, rolling around in, coping with, for better and worse, the eclipse changes. So the Cancer energy is bringing in a lot of emotion, a lot of tilt towards the energy of home, family, housing, home projects, things involving childhood psychology, upbringing, having to take some steps backwards in order to be able to take future steps forward. But there's also a coinciding energy of Leo. And Leo is going to give us the audacity to do something with the opportunities that come to us. Also a zest and a passion and creative expression. So in general, new moons and full moons have power for positive changes and things coming to a head, things coming out into the open, things coming to manifestation. When we have eclipses on an eclipse on a new moon or a full moon, it gives us 3 times the manifestation power. So 3 times the new beginnings, 3 times the drama or culmination or, things coming to a head. So it's just definitely a powerful month. Very, very, very intense. Intensity is another keynote of this time. As we talked about in the June horoscopes, and definitely if you haven't watched my June horoscopes, you want to do that because I cover the eclipses in detail. There's so much to talk about for this time period. I couldn't fit it all in 1 month. So in June, I go into detail and tell you exactly where the eclipses will hit for you and what manifestations you can see. So definitely rewatch that here in July, even if you watch them in June, so that you can be better poised for understanding the changes that are coming. But in general, the eclipse cycle of Cancer and Capricorn bring in lots of changes to home and family and work and your place out in the world, things with mother and father, and your maternal and paternal energies. Look back to 2009 to 2011 and 2000 to 2001. Those are the times when we experienced this Capricorn Cancer eclipse cycles in the past. So you might see patterns. And I have gotten this question. If those have been your worst times, don't worry. That's not necessarily going to happen again. It's the themes that are brought up that are common to have a continuum. So the areas of life that were a focus, those will likely be a focus at this time. And it doesn't have to manifest the same way that it did. Okay, so I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights here as certain dates to note that are my favorite or my most you have to watch out for. If you want a complete list of the aspects that are occurring and what's involved with those aspects, what planets and signs are at play, and what you can expect from those, definitely sign up for my free email newsletter at anniehelpsyou.com. You'll also get my 28-day virtual coaching program called Shine for free when you sign up for my free email newsletter. Plus, you'll get a written detailed email newsletter a month before, just like I do the horoscopes a month before, of the dates and the aspects and what to look out for, so you have them for your planning purpose and you get those a month early. So you can see that at anniehelpsyou.com. But we'll hit some highlights here. The new moons are going to be, first the new moon and the solar eclipse, 10 degrees of Cancer, is on July 2nd. So that is a time of major intensity. I do have blogs on my website for how to make the most of each new moon and each full moon in the different signs. So definitely check those out. Mercury is going to go retrograde at 4 degrees of Leo and back to 23 degrees of Cancer. We talked about this at length, but that's occurring on July 7th, and that pretty much goes until July 31st or August 1st, depending on your time zone. The whole month is covered in Mercury retrograde. We've got some challenges to look out for as far as squares and oppositions throughout the month, and you can see the details of that in my newsletter. But one of the things that I most want you to be aware of is the full moon eclipse on July 16th. That is a lunar eclipse, 24 degrees of Capricorn, lots of intensity around that time, things coming to culmination. Be extra careful and also look out for extra rewards and things that you've worked on from the past that can come in a big way. I always try to keep that period of time a little bit light, if possible. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but just be extra careful around that time. What they say about the full moons with, crazy things happening is really true. Whenever you watch these mystical shows or like Merlin or whatever, it's always a full moon when these, crazy things go on. So just take note of that and be prepared to deal with whatever comes. The second full moon, or rather the second new moon, is at 8 degrees of Leo, and that's on July 31st, or thereabouts, depending on your time zone. So the second new moon in the calendar month is a black moon, and there's extra power at this time for wishes and new beginnings. So plenty of opportunities for new beginnings. This month is just chock full of them. Throughout the month, we have some challenges with Uranus, we have challenges with Pluto, we have challenges, Pluto, Uranus, kind of a theme there, Saturn. So some of the outer planets are in challenging configurations, and this can bring tests, but it doesn't have to be a be-all, end-all. Often it can bring overstimulation, and that could be a major theme of this month. We could get through this month and have complete positive outcomes and no negativity at all. Certain people will have that experience. Other people will have massive drama and lots of challenges, but there's no one way it has to go. It's wide open here. But understanding the element of the opposition is important because oppositions are pulling us in two different directions. So be prepared to be pulled in two different directions, and also be prepared to be overstimulated. This is going to be an incredibly busy month physically, like moving around, doing stuff. Emotionally, it will be busy. You will be handling things. You might be holding space for other people who are dealing with changes. During eclipse cycles, we'll often see people around us going through massive change, and sometimes we are too. So it's hard to tell at this point if you're going to be a space holder for other people as they go through these big changes, or if you're going to be one of the people going through the big changes, or both. Sometimes in eclipse time, we're going through these big changes and we're also holding space for other people doing that. So be prepared to be overstimulated emotionally and mentally. That's why this theme of just trying to be well rested is really important, because we know that you can't really handle things as well when you're tired. So the more you can be not tired and take your supplements and, do whatever you need to for support, do your walks, do your exercise, you're going to much better be able to use the energies that are present at this time. And there are a lot of sweet aspects in between these challenging ones. So there are some nuisances, but there are lots of sweet things too. Okay, so definitely go to my website, anniehelpsyou.com. I have an extensive astrology blog plus other blogs that you can check out there on different topics. If you resonate with how I teach, you would love to learn, my astrology apprenticeship program is open for enrollment, and I will teach you everything you need to know to do astrology professionally, or if you just want it for your self-development process, it's amazing for that as well. You can check out all the other kinds of goodies I have on my site, including subliminal recordings that I create for you to help and train your brain to the positive changes that you're trying to make. And you can also see my other professional development courses there. Definitely check out my book, Radical Prayer, Transform Your Life and the World in 28 Days. As I mentioned before, it has become a purse friend. It has become a car friend, a bedtime companion. It's just an amazing book for the spiritual seeker to really help you to use the power of word and prayer and intention to manifest the positive changes you want to see in your life. Check out my husband's website, IamHelios.com. He has amazing options now for you to use audio, subliminal, power-packed, frequency-enhanced recordings to mitigate the negative energies of transits and to enhance the positive energies of astrological transits. So we've worked together in the way of trying to figure out what resources would be best for you based on the things I see in the charts. So you can see the options for audios that can help you to maximize the transit. So you can check that out at IamHelios.com. Also, you can book a live reading at my site, AnnieHelpsYou.com, either with me or my amazing apprentice, Marilee. And you can also book sessions with my husband, B.R. Newman, at IamHelios.com. Okay, so those are the things I most have in mind for you this month. I hope you have a wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Bye.